Hello again, ladies and gents. I'm Andyb, and this is the Sum 41 Retrospective, Episode 10, Part 2. Well, here we are. What seems to be the final chapter, Part 2. And this is one of those rare cases where I'm gonna keep my preamble short so I can dive right into my nonsensical rambling. So without much further ado, let's begin with Part 2. When Sum 41 announced Heaven and Hell back in March of 2022, I was most excited for the Heaven side. It was Sum 41's first batch of new pop-punk in over a decade, and I was curious to see how the band would approach the genre after so many years away. With the Hell side, I figured I more or less knew what to expect. I felt it was going to be a continuation of the band's punk metal hybrid sound that they had been producing for the past few releases. And when Derek mentioned during interviews that some of the Hellside tracks came from the Order in Decline writing sessions, that just helped to reinforce those feelings. And then, on December 12, 2023, Sum 41 released Rise Up, the first single from the Hellside, and my speculations almost felt confirmed at that point. More on that track later. Now, with all this being said, it's not that I wasn't excited for the Hellside or that I thought it was going to be bad. I love Sum 41's hybrid punk metal sound. But Order in Decline, at least to my ears, already kinda felt like more of the same when compared to 13 Voices. So for the Hellside to be another case of doing more of the same, it would be disappointing. Especially coming from a band that constantly evolved and experimented with their sound.
We just kind of make a point to not record the same album over and over. On each album we try and do something a little different.
So is the Hellside truly more of the same? If so, is it at least a good set of songs? Or did Sum 41 take one final step forward in their last outing? Get comfortable, ladies and gents, 'cause for this last ride, we're going to hell.
Go to hell.
Well, it seems I'm eating crow right off the bat, because this is not exactly your typical Sum 41 intro, as the first thing you hear with this track is synthesized vocal harmonies. After being enchanted by the lovely synth pads of Radio Silence, I was thrust into the opening of hell, only to be met with Sum 41's take on Imogen Heap.
What you say?
I was definitely taken aback, but in a good way. This intro, whose name I can't really pronounce well, so I'm just gonna call it the PAS intro, incorporates new elements into a familiar Sum 41 sound. The familiar sound in this case being 13 Voices and Order in Decline.
I've never felt this more alive. I don't wanna miss a day.
However, this build-up quickly dissolves, as the second half is a solo piano and vocal section.
I don't wanna close my eyes. I can never get enough.
If the track had burst into something more energetic, then ending on something somber would have been more effective. But instead, it feels more like the track is shutting down before it really gets started. While not as fleshed out compared to an intro like A Murder of Crows, PAS is still a surprising and decently effective intro. Rise Up was the second single from Heaven and Hell, released on December 12, 2023. And this was our first taste of the Hellside. Now, like I said, Derek mentioned that some of these Hellside tracks originated during the Order in Decline sessions, and Rise Up is the most obvious example of that. From the distorted screams to the general riffing style, it features a few key traits found throughout Order in Decline, being most reminiscent of Out for Blood.
I bet you thought that I had fallen away. It never crossed your mind that there'd be a day when so when you think you've got me by a thread, you need to think again.
even though the track has a bit of a been there, done that quality, it's still pretty enjoyable. It was a bit underwhelming at first, but after a few listens, I will say the track has definitely grown on me a bit. It's got an explosive energy, Derek gives a passionate vocal performance, and it has a sweet breakdown riff. But like waiting on a twist of fate before it, the post-solo bridge is a low point for me. However, in the case of Rise Up, the post-solo bridge is actually the second half of the PAS intro.
I don't wanna close my eyes.
So at the very least, this bridge serves as connective tissue between the two tracks. But really, that just means it could have been improved in both cases, and it still serves as a weak drop-off. But overall, Rise Up is a solid rager. It has that style of melodic fury that modern Sum 41 has shown off time and time again, and pretty much made their own. And as the first full track on the Hell side, it makes for a strong start. Stranger in These Times opens with what I'd describe as a gothic swing riff, and it's pretty kick-ass. Dark notes and backing vocals mixed with a bouncing groove make for a killer combination. The groovy intro then gives way to a ferocious verse, which is just as kick-ass. Even at the end of their run, Sum 41's energy still sounds as tenacious as ever.
I'm born and broken, but so never think you're like me. I feel claustrophobic, not sure if I can take it. Hoping no one knows it, that I'm just trying to fake it. How long will I pretend I'm fine while I'm living this life?
The track jumps between different feels in a very natural and cohesive way. It may seem pretty standard, but this is the kind of structural variety that I felt was missing from a bunch of the Heavenside tracks. And now, a Sum 41 fun fact. The pre-chorus riff is actually a 13 Voices era leftover. A couple teaser videos from around 2015 showcase this exact riff being played, albeit in a different key. Generally, there's a lot I like about this song, but I still have two main complaints. First off, the bridge. It starts off okay with these relaxed, clean guitars, but that quickly gives way to a drum build-up, and then we're right back into the final chorus.
Times. Hey, they get the best of me. Reality just slowly slips away.
Personally, I would have liked if they kept the somber feeling going for a bit longer. Second, this track, like a bunch of the Heavenside tracks, has an abrupt ending. And sadly, it will not be the last of the Hellside tracks to have one. With this track in particular, I would have loved to hear that awesome intro riff again. But nope, it's just a hard cut after the final chorus. Not even 3 minutes long, and it's like the track is afraid it's gonna overstay its welcome. I understand the desire to drive the song forward and keep a momentum going. I mean, that's one of my favorite aspects about Does This Look Infected? But that doesn't mean a song should feel rushed or undercut. But aside from those grievances, Stranger in These Times is still pretty great. It takes the momentum of the first two tracks and just runs with it, kicking the Hellside into high gear. This track is fucking awesome. I'm just planting my opinion flag right at the start. Because groove is the name of the game here. That heavy mid-tempo main riff is headbangable as hell. And yes, the pun was definitely intended. The verse sections keep things going with a steady beat and that smooth, murky bass line. It's got this kind of strutting attitude that you don't really hear from Sum 41, and it sounds great.
Grace, 'cause it seems I've sold my soul for parts of my just too.
And once again, each section has a distinct feel, but without losing that strutting sense of groove. For this number, Sum 41 really brought their dancing shoes. Also, for my money, this is the best chorus on the Hell side.
Beneath the shadows where you never had to matter. Well, now it's done, this nightmare's
Of course, Sum 41 didn't forget their running shoes, as the solo section kicks up the tempo. And the guitar solo is sweet high-flying ferocity. But let's take a step back, because the preceding bridge section is also a bit different, as it drops down into a lo-fi synth-driven section. And you see that you can bring down a song's energy without flatlining. It also helps that the energy drop is better implemented by coming in before the guitar solo, so it actually creates a solid crescendo. Folks, I can't stress this enough, but it's the small things that really make a difference. Overall, I Don't Need Anyone is a stellar track. It has the band stepping into new, more groove-focused territory while still maintaining their punk metal edge. And it's easily in my top 3 songs off the Hell side. I describe Over the Edge as the most standard Hell side track, as it encompasses a lot of the core elements you'll find with these songs, like the fast-aggressive verse, big chorus, simple and/or quiet bridge. And with these elements, Over the Edge contains the same general pros and cons of the Hell side. There's a heavy breakdown riff, but it doesn't do much for me, and it hard cuts into another underwhelming bridge that once again is just piano and vocals.
over the edge and it's
If you're gonna bring down the energy, can't there be some variety in how you do so? Man, I'm telling you, the mid-sections on Heaven and Hell are so hit and miss, and one side kind of outweighs the other. But even though I don't really like the breakdown, I will say ending with a reprise of that riff does work well from a structural standpoint, so I give it that. While I don't like it as much as the previous tracks, Over the Edge is still fairly decent. Like I said, it does encompass a lot of the good things you'll find on the Hell side, it's just that there are other tracks on the Hell side that do these things better. But there's one thing that does set this track apart, and that's a distinctive outro. Instead of flatlining, Over the Edge actually ends with an interesting lo-fi piano riff that leads nicely into the next track. House of Liars takes a step back from high-speed fury and instead goes for gothic moodiness. After a guitar-bend-heavy intro, we're led into a relaxed yet tense verse, which is built off the ending piano riff of Over the Edge. And this type of chord progression is pretty unique for Sum 41. It has a mysterious Mixolydian flat 6 feel, and I don't believe Sum 41 has used this kind of progression before.
we make our own choices, the rest is just luck.
However, the track's newer qualities are kind of ironic, considering House of Liars comes from the Screaming Bloody Murder era.
There's a song on this record called House of Liars that I've been working on since 2009. That was originally I was writing for the Screaming Bloody Murder album that I could never quite finish. I couldn't get a chorus that I really liked. And then finally it clicked on this record.
I don't believe in ignorance no more. Ourselves we deceive.
Some people may think differently, but again, I really like how Derek has been making use of older and unfinished Sum 41 tracks and bringing them to fruition on this final album. I mean, we've never heard this song in any sort of proper or complete capacity, so it still feels like new, fresh material. It also helps that the track in question is a pretty good one. I like that it takes a different melodic approach compared to the other Hellside tracks, and the chorus that Derek finally wrote for this song is also pretty damn good.
Burn down this house of liars. Now I say you're guilty as you can be.
Now, as you, the audience, may know, I'm a big fan of guitar riffs. And these bridge riffs are some of my favorites on Heaven and Hell. Not to get too ahead of myself, but one thing the Hell side has over the Heaven side is a better use of guitar harmonies. I mean, Sum 41 effectively has 2 lead guitar players, and it's nice to hear songs put that to good use. Overall, House of Liars is another one of my Hellside favorites. It's an interesting case where pulling from the past actually produces something new and stand out, on both this album and in the band's discography. You Wanted War is debatably the grandest and most epic-sounding track on Heaven and Hell, and it's only 3.5 minutes. No, guys, really, I'm fine. I mean, I don't even like songs over 4 minutes anyway. You know, once again, it's the small things that help to elevate every section of the song. Like, the track comes out swinging with this great Sum 41 riffage, and I love how the drums change over the course of the main riff. The verses also showcase a great sense of dynamics and progression, with each verse having its own distinct feel and building energy in its own way. And I know I said I Don't Need Anyone has my favorite chorus, but this one might just have it beat.
And all the time you occupied a distant memory, 'cause you wanted war. You better hope and wish and pray, 'cause you get blown away.
This track also has the most guitar soloing on the album, which, by the way, fun fact, is Derek's favorite moment on Heaven and Hell. And it's not too hard to see why. I think at this point, it's fair to compliment the soloing, not just on this track, but across the entire album. Heaven and Hell has some of the best solos that Sum 41 has recorded in years. And I gotta give my kudos to Mr. Dave Brownsound and Mr. Tom Thacker for delivering such guitar excellence. Great guitar work, a strong sense of progression and dynamics, attention to detail, a totally anthemic chorus. You Wanted War contains a lot of what makes the classic Sum 41 songs great. And once again, it's one of my favorites from the Hell side.
And death, our victims tragic, life in your hands, strung by madness.
Painted Black is, unsurprisingly, a cover of the 1966 Rolling Stones classic. Now, Sum 41 are not the first to give Painted Black the punk rock treatment. In fact, Gob did a punk cover of Painted Black back in 1998 for their album How Far Shallow Takes You.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. I could not foresee this thing happening to you.
And Sum 41 covered this song live back in the Screaming Bloody Murder days, with Tom on vocals. So they were no strangers to covering this song. The original Painted Black was a darker 60s rock track with a gloomy sitar riff and melancholic lyrics about grief. The song's darker sound really lent itself to more aggressive rock renditions. And Sum 41's darker, metal-infused style of punk, especially the kind from the Screaming Bloody Murder days, was a perfect fit for Painted Black. From an arrangement standpoint, this Hellside rendition seems to follow the version they play live. which is derived from the Gob version. The major differences being that Derek sings this version and the newer, cleaner production. And the positives of the Rolling Stones original are kept intact for this cover.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. I see the girls walk by dressed in their summer clothes. No more will my green sea go turn a deeper blue.
Now, understandably, I imagine some people are disappointed that one of the songs on the final Sum 41 album is a cover song as opposed to another Sum 41 original. And yeah, I kinda feel that too. But at the same time, and I may be in the Sum 41 minority here, wouldn't be the first time, but I think this cover song is actually kinda fitting for this album. I mean, this final release is sort of a reflection of the band's various styles over the years. And even from their early days, Sum 41 has shown a love for classic rock and metal bands like Aerosmith and Metallica. Lest we forget, so the inclusion of this Rolling Stones cover, a band that Sum 41 and Derek in particular is a big fan of, to me does feel kind of appropriate.
So this next song we're going to play is a Rolling Stones song. It's called Mother's Little Helper. We all grew up being really big fans of Rolling Stones, and it's one of our favorite songs. So here it is.
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Aerosmith, Rolling Stones.
Overall, I think Sum 41's cover of Paint It Black is a great rendition, and a nice tip of the cap to the band's love of classic rock bands. Here we have yet another track from Sum 41's vault, and this is the oldest one yet. This time we're taking it back to 2003, as It's All Me originated during the Chuck era.
Well, there's a song in there from 2003.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
It's I think it's called It's All Me.
Oh, yeah,
it's
right.
one right before How the Ending
Oh,
Gets
right,
Made.
yeah.
That was from the Chuck days.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a Chuck demo that never got finished.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes indeed, we're looking at the remains of a golden Sum 41 era. But in spite of its origin, during what many people consider the band's peak, I'm not the biggest fan of this one. What?! Yeah, that opinion's probably not making me any friends, but let me explain. At this point on the Hell side, it's just kind of more of what we've been hearing. The verses in particular are very similar to the ones in Over the Edge. And this is yet another song that talks about lies.
You really made us all believe your lies are undefeated. Burn down this house of liars. It's a useless masquerade. And tell more lies.
Seriously, would it kill you to sing about skateboarding or getting dumped every once in a while? It's not so much that the subject matter is repeated, but the way Derek writes about it is repeated. The only message really getting across here is, you're a liar and I won't fall for it. I wouldn't say they're bad, but some of these Hellside lyrics really fall flat. And the guitar solo? Well, actually, I have no real issues with the solo. It's pretty solid. Good stuff, Dave. Now, in spite of my complaints, the track still has a great energy. And the Chuck-isms cannot be denied. The bridge in particular, from its chord progression to the lead guitar in the second half, is just pure, righteous 2004 Sum 41.
Minds, complete control, no compromise.
Though it's not a personal favorite, It's All Me is not a bad song. And just like with Johnny Libertine and House of Liars, I'm happy these pieces of Sum 41's past got to officially see the light of day just as we approach the end. Speaking of which...
Set
Well, here we are. The final Sum 41 track. And folks, I hate to say this, but, this one's disappointing. It's a more dramatic song with a mostly halftime feel, and certain sections, the bridge in particular, kind of remind me of Linkin Park.
I wonder if I have enough to say. Now it's the end, we can't get it back. Why doesn't anything good ever last? I should have known.
And for the most part, it's okay. It's just nothing stellar. It just kinda feels like another song, as opposed to a distinctive closer. And maybe that's because this song wasn't exactly written to be a closer. It was just another unfinished song from Order in Decline.
Career, and we're actually still
And it has life instantly. The second we play it for the very first time, it's like it all knew already, and it just kind of, it's so much.
I mean, if you took So Long Goodbye from Underclass Hero and made that like, I don't know, track 7, something's gonna feel off. The same goes for songs like 88 from Chuck, or Twisted by Design from 13 Voices. They have a certain grandeur or feel that's fitting for a closing song. The only part of the track that really has a finale kind of feel is the lyrics. They talk about the end, reflecting on what you've done, and wondering if you have anything left to say that you haven't said before. These lyrics are one of the better things about this song. But overall, this track just kind of feels rushed to me, quickly jumping from section to section without much in between. It's like if you were sprinting past a beautiful sunset, it would probably look nicer if you stopped for a moment to take in the view. While it may have the basic traits of a power ballad, How the End Begins lacks the strong pacing and dynamics that previous Sum 41 ballads had and used to great effect. And you wanna guess how the song ends? Yeah, it just stops. I mean, come on, really? We couldn't even get a simple fade out for the final song? Guys, it's not a race. You can take your time. Expand a section or two. You're the headliners, not the opening band. We came to see you. Stay a while. How the End Begins is simply underwhelming. And it's really a shame that Sum 41 decided to close out their final album with a track like this. And so, to the sound of, silence, Heaven and Hell finally comes to a close. And that was Heaven and Hell. Though the outro was kind of a letdown, it doesn't speak for the entire album. It's more of a mixed bag in many ways. So let's start with some positives. For me, Heaven and Hell is kind of like a Sum 41 sample platter. It features musical bits and pieces from each of the core Sum 41 eras, really making it feel like, dare I say, a retrospective of the band's discography, which for a final album is pretty appropriate. And I like how, despite returning to a previous genre with the pop-punk Heaven side, the album doesn't sound like a blatant nostalgia grab. It's reminiscent of the past without being too self-indulgent, and you get songs and moments that are new and unique to this release. There's also some great performances here, with the band delivering in top form both instrumentally and vocally. All things considered, it's nice to hear Sum 41 going out in good shape. But also like a sample platter, what this album has in scope, it lacks in substance. Because overall, Heaven and Hell showcases a simplified version of Sum 41. From shorter runtimes to the structural simplicity of most songs, the music on display here is noticeably shallower than previous releases. I was an advocate for good bridges before, but after hearing this album, my appreciation for them tripled. Declare me the new president of the Bridge Appreciation Fan Club. I know things like transitions or dynamics may seem like basic or common songwriting elements, but they can add a lot to a song's quality, and I think they're worth praising when executed well. And on Heaven and Hell, that's just not as often as I would have liked. Now, in regards to each individual side, when the Heaven side is good, it makes for a really fun time. Tracks like Waiting on a Twist of Fate, Future Primitive, and Johnny Libertine do a great job capturing the spirit of early Sum 41 and bringing that style into the current day. And throughout these 10 tracks, the band show they haven't lost their knack for bright and catchy melodies. However, there were some duds, simplicities, and moments of repetition that brought things down. And while it was generally enjoyable, the Heaven side did leave me a bit disappointed. On the other hand, I enjoyed the Hell side a bit more than I initially expected. I thought I knew what this side was gonna sound like, and I was pleasantly surprised to be proven wrong. Tracks like I Don't Need Anyone and House of Liars showed off new sides of the band, while the speed and tenacity of songs like Stranger in These Times and You Wanted War were exciting in familiar ways. Though it also has its problems, it's at least a more interesting listen compared to Order in Decline. The general fan consensus, as far as I've seen, is that the Hell side is the better of the two sides. And personally, I'd have to agree. In both good and bad ways, Heaven and Hell serves as a reminder of what Sum 41 has done and what Sum 41 is capable of. They've gone through a lot of changes in their plus 25 years, and if anything, Heaven and Hell makes me wonder where the band would have gone from here, and leaves me wanting more from Sum 41. But maybe it's better to be left wanting more rather than wanting less. It's certainly not their best album, and it's not a masterpiece by any means, but it still has its fair share of bright spots and memorable tracks. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I love Sum 41 and this is their final album. But as far as finales go, I'd say Heaven and Hell was a fairly good note to go out on. And there you have it. My thoughts on Sum 41's Heaven and Hell. Well, see ya. Nah, I'm just messing with ya. You think I would end the video that abruptly?
Hey baby, I hear the blues.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So now it's the end. For real this time. At least as far as I know. It's weird to do a proto-finale, only to have a real finale happen a few episodes later. Granted, those few episodes were made over the course of like 3 years, so I don't know. It's like Schrodinger's time, it's been a long time and a short time simultaneously. The Sum 41 Retrospective has been quite the project. It's honestly been a challenge and frustrating at times, but making this series has impacted me in so many positive ways. Over the course of the retrospective, I've sharpened my creative skills, learned a lot of cool Sum 41 history and trivia, developed my work ethic, and somehow even cultivated an audience, whose continued viewing and support for the series has been a genuine motivator and undeniable reason I wanted to keep making these videos. To everyone who's ever watched, liked, shared, commented on, or even just simply watched any Sum 41 retrospective video, thank you, and thank you. And of course, I can't forget to thank the band themselves, Sum 41. It's thanks to their music and career that I have the love of guitar playing and rock music that I do. And for obvious reasons, this retrospective wouldn't exist without them. It's partially a recounting of history, partially a discography review, but ultimately, I see the Sum 41 retrospective as my way of paying tribute to a band I have loved for so many years, and hopefully many years to come. And with that, I think I've said my piece. So, signing off, I'm Andyb, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if I make another, maybe I'll see you then. Take it easy, and thanks again.